All right, so we're going to go ahead and get started here. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to our Thursday evening Parent Academy webinar session. Thank you for joining, and again, we are so excited to have you as audience listeners and participants. I am Dr. Dre Graham, the Director of Educational Equity and Outreach for Alachua County Public Schools, and I welcome you this evening. Tonight, we will receive some helpful information from our guest speaker, Ms. Grace Brown. Ms. Brown will share some details regarding strategies for identifying, navigating, and managing your child's anxiety. Just before we get started, let's review a few housekeeping elements. Please keep your microphones on mute through the duration of the presentation. We will be monitoring your questions and will respond accordingly. Please use the Q&A feature located at the bottom of your webinar window. And please note that all Parent Academy webinars are closed captioned, recorded, and posted to our website for access at a later date for re-review and for any individuals who could not tune in tonight. Your questions will be answered at the conclusion of each session. And if there's a specific need to have a personal conversation, the Parent Academy email is parentacademy@gm.sbac.edu. And we will get those questions and your requests for additional information forwarded to the correct ACPS or community team member. And now I would like to present our guest speaker for this evening, Ms. Grace Brown, Impact Manager at the Cook Center for Human Connection.
Wow, thank you so much for having me this evening. Thank you for having the Cook Center for Human Connection. We are all about connection. You know, we know that connection is a very powerful way to boost mental health. And so we're excited to get started with you this evening. Like I said, my name is Grace Brown, and I will be hosting today's session. And while I am starting to introduce our session, I want to make sure you know about Menti. If you would like to participate in tonight's session anonymously, we would love to have you go ahead and scan this QR code. If you're using your phone, you can scan this QR code, and you can actually participate in different questions, polls, give your own parenting advice, ask questions throughout the night. And so really feel free to go ahead and scan that QR code, and then you'll be able to do that. Once you're in, you'll see a thumbs up or a heart button, and you can do that to let me know that you have made it into Menti. You can also access Menti by going to www.menti.com, and you can enter in the code 39388729. And so I will give everyone just a minute to go ahead and do that and get into Menti. And everyone see that little thumbs up there at the bottom. As soon as we get people in, we will start seeing how many people are in. So go ahead and log in to Menti if you are able to. If not, go ahead and just listen throughout the evening, and that'll be okay too. All right, so friends, I just want to welcome you to tonight's session. It's on parentguidance.org. We are part of parentguidance.org, and this is a parentguidance.org mental health series. I am going to be your facilitator this evening, and I'd like to thank Dr. Graham and all of Alachua for bringing parentguidance.org into your school and planning for discussions to help you and your child. You know, in my own life, anxiety has been something that has affected not only me, but also family members, students, all kinds of people in my life. And so I'm really excited to be here tonight as we really tackle anxiety and really talk about moving toward our anxiety. So it looks like we've got 2 people in Menti. Go ahead and, like I said, feel free to go to www.menti.com. This is a way for you to anonymously take polls, quizzes, just participate through tonight's session. And so I'd love to see if you're on. Go ahead and click that little thumbs up button so we can see that you are with us this evening. As I go through the night, www.menti.com, and the code will stay at the top of the screen. So if you're not quite in yet, or if you get out and need to come back in, you can do that throughout the night. All right. So We are here tonight to discuss your child's anxiety and really have this mental health discussion. And so we're going to start by getting to know you. Anxiety tends to not feel great. It's overwhelming sometimes. And it also can be natural for us to kind of want to move against anxiety or push it down, push it to the side, make it go away. So we're going to really talk about how to help our children, how to help ourselves in these kind of anxiety-provoking situations that come up in the lives of our children, in the lives of ourselves, and really all of those around us. So my first question for you, if you're in Menti, is go ahead and share with me what are the ages of your children? And you can pick multiple if you have kiddos in elementary, middle, high school. Go ahead and let us know what ages of kiddos do you have in your life? We've got some middle school, we've got some elementary school with us, and we might even have some high school folks that are not in Menti. So welcome to everyone that is here this evening. And when you're on Menti, sometimes if you feel like you're still looking at the old slide, it'll say click to next slide. So just wanted to make sure you all knew that as well. We have some high school families, welcome. So great, we have a nice mix of families on this evening. And I just wanna thank you all for being here this evening, showing up for yourselves, showing up for your students, to really learn about anxiety. It's a really important topic for us as adults to understand. I also wanted to know if you've been to a parentguidance.org series in the past, or maybe this is the first series you've ever attended. And in any case, go ahead and let us know. Is this the first one or you've been before? Awesome, awesome, fantastic. Looks like we've got some folks that have been with us before. We've got some folks that are new to parentguidance.org and some of the things that we do with schools. Awesome, thank you so much. And I see we have a few more people in Menti. And so like I said, feel free to go to www.menti.com and use the code 39388729 to be able to participate as the night goes on. That'll kind of stay up at the top of our screen. This is a really important conversation for us to sort of begin with. Even if you have joined us before, I'd like you to go ahead and take this survey. We'd like to ask you to answer our beginning survey so that really I can get an idea of how comfortable you are with tonight's topic. So this is a sliding scale, so you can use your finger or your cursor to slide it. Is it poor? Is it excellent? Are you somewhere in the middle? I'm curious on where you are on this. I feel equipped to support my child in managing their mental health. How do you feel on that one? Do you feel excellent? Do you feel poor? Do you feel maybe somewhere in the middle? And what about this question? I know where to find resources to help me navigate helping my children manage their anxiety. Do you feel like you have the resources you need? This is another question I'm curious about. My community is interested in supportive of my child's mental health and well-being. How do you feel about that? Let's see here what is said. All right. So as we're seeing kind of results come in, you can see our sliding scale is changing a bit. But you know, some of us feel like maybe there's room for more knowledge, room for improvement, and just understanding anxiety. And a lot of us feel like maybe we don't know where to go for resources as it relates to anxiety, or maybe we only know of one or two resources and you're going to expand your parent toolbox tonight by getting some more resources on anxiety. And as far as your community being interested in supporting your child's mental health and well-being, that's actually our highest score, which isn't surprising because, you know, in Alachua, your school district is bringing you nights like tonight. And so again, thank you to Dr. Graham and the entire Alachua community for really bringing this night together for us. If you are concerned or worried about your child, don't feel alone. Our research actually shows that 32% of parents that we survey feel their child is unhappy, and parents really aren't sure what to do to help. And this is something that I personally can relate to. Over 50% of parents worry their child is struggling, but maybe don't know how to talk with them. And so this is why we've created parentguidance.org, tonight's mental health series, and all of our resources, so that together we can explore any sort of things that are coming up in your children, anything that they're dealing with, that you're dealing with. We're here tonight to help each other discover tools to help you help your child. And, our research is really important to everything we do. And so if you ever get a survey from the Cook Center for Human Connection, feel free to take it. It's always anonymous, but it really helps us to gauge what's going on in the country as far as parent-child mental health, and really in mental health across the country. So tonight we are going to really explore a new concept, move toward. And this is to help provide a solution for helping anxiety. And I'm so excited that we get to hear from Jenna Ramirsma this evening. She is a member of our parentguidance.org faculty, and she is the founder of Move Toward by Jenna. She's a Harvard-trained licensed counselor and therapist, and Jenna also is a #1 best-selling author. And so tonight I'm going to share her work with you and really take this opportunity to hear from Jenna, hear about Move Toward, hear about these methods, and just kind of sit back, relax, join us in Menti, and take this in as we talk about moving toward our children's anxiety. Let's hear from Jenna.
Move Toward is really a movement that stands at the intersection of the finest of wellness traditions. And as such, it owes a real debt of gratitude to the groundbreaking thinkers whose work has contributed to Move Toward. People like Dr. Stephen Porges, Dr. Richard Schwartz, Dr. Peter Levine, Jon Kabat-Zinn, and Bessel van der Kolk all have been groundbreaking and revolutionary thinkers in the fields of neuroscience, clinical application of mental health, and mindfulness-based stress reduction. So Move Toward, as we said, synthesizes many of these powerful traditions into one simple phrase and 3 simple words: notice, notify, need. Well, when we move toward a part of ourself, let's say a behavior or a feeling that we may not like or appreciate, we're moving toward it with a sense of curiosity and compassion to help it, not to move against it. What exactly is move against? Well, think with me. For example, in my own life, I have dealt with anxiety, shame, and fear pretty significantly. Ways that we can move against those feelings in our own lives can be things like staying too busy to feel them, or trying to do everything perfectly so that we never mess up and have to feel all that yucky shame. Or it could be things like pouring an extra glass of wine at the end of the day to try to take the edge off or deal with the stress or kind of make it all go away. We also are very skilled in our culture, in our families, and sometimes in our religious communities of moving against others. Moving against would be doing things like judging, like shaming, like criticizing, or perhaps attacking, raging, blaming, gaslighting. These are all ways that we move against. And it's instinctive. It's kind of built into us. The solution is counterintuitive and simple: move toward. As we said, it is a movement that is it is for you as you move toward parts of yourself and others that are difficult, that you don't like. But move toward means we are for compassion. We are for connection. We are for spiritual, mental, emotional attunement to our own bodies and to what's happening in the world outside of us. It is for love, and it is for compassion, courage, and connection, as we said. At the end of the day, those, my friends, compassion, courage, connection, and love, are the attributes that change the world for good. I know that's a pretty big statement, but I want these words to be simple, accessible, memorable, and usable. Because at the end of the day, if you can't remember it, if it doesn't make sense to you, and you can't use it, it's not going to change your life. So here's the 3 words. Once again, notice, notify, need.
Notice, notify, need. Those are the 3 words that we're going to discover tonight. So I want to invite you to get curious as we dive into our first section, notify. Later on, we will talk about what your child's anxiety is trying to notify you of after we notice. And then finally, we will talk about how to answer the anxiety alarm. And I really hope that you find these strategies to be helpful for you and your child as we really go through tonight's session. It's time for us to do another Menti. So grab your phones or your device that you are on Menti with, and go ahead and share your biggest concerns. What are you hoping to learn tonight? What are some of the things that made you want to join tonight's session on anxiety? For those of you who have trickled in, I am so glad you are here. I see that we have a big crowd, and I want to make sure that you all know you can go to www.menti.com and use the code. Hopefully you can see it right up here. Use the code 39388729 to go ahead and join us in Menti, so you can respond to this question or other quizzes, polls throughout the evening. This is completely anonymous, but I'm curious and would love for you to share your biggest concern or what you're hoping to learn from tonight's session. I'll give everyone a minute or 2 to do that. All right, looks like we have some responses coming in. Please keep them going. Again, we'd love as many people as possible to join us at menti.com and use the code. But let's see what's come in. So somebody is sharing that their child gets feelings and faces that really look anxious or unhappy, and it makes you as parents a little bit nervous that he gets so upset at the thought that maybe he did something wrong or maybe in trouble. And yeah, I think, often we live in this kind of perfectionist society. And so we'll talk a little bit about that and how we can help with those sort of anxious feelings that are coming up and really making our children feel unhappy. How to help your child process anxiety and still move forward, help him understand that he can still be successful in all areas of life. How to identify anxiety. Test anxiety is a big issue, absolutely. Not understanding anxiety, maybe it's something you've never experienced, as this parent shared. Somebody says that she hopes to help her daughter overcome anxiety and really wants to learn strategies to use as a family. So the parents of that child are really looking for strategies, and you're going to get a few of those today as well. My child doesn't want to go to school. Anxiety over going to school, maybe bullying, friends, that kind of thing. and then hoping to learn how the whole family processes anxiety. Excellent. Thank you so much for sharing. And it looks like we have two other questions. So I'm going to go ahead and see that. My son's tantrums, he throws things, he causes damage, and he's sick. So yeah, that is one reason that this parent joined. And another one is just asking, how do I handle this? And choose on clothes, choose on cheeks, that kind of thing. And we're going to go over that as well. So thank you for all of you that submitted those comments and questions. Our next segment, Jenna is going to share about noticing and how we have to sort of get curious before we can really dive into whatever is going on.
So parents, when we're noticing, we want to notice almost like we're a journalist, unemotionally observing and taking note of the facts. So we're not attaching any value to what we're seeing. It's not good or bad. It's not right or wrong. It's not anything at all. We're just noticing the facts. We're noticing how and when the anxiety shows up for our child. Now notice, I said how and when. One important part of wisely noticing as a parent is observing what happens before the anxiety amps up and what tends to happen after the anxiety amps up. So what is triggering our child's anxiety? And we don't always have access to that information. Lots and lots of things are happening in our child's world that are outside of our awareness. On social media, there could be all kinds of things going on. They may see pictures of a friend who's having a party and they weren't invited, and we have no idea. They just saw that on Instagram and their anxiety goes up, and we don't see anything in the environment that would catalyze that. So recognizing our children's anxiety matters, and it always makes sense, even if we don't have all the information to make sense of it. Now, we also want to notice not only what's triggering it, if we have awareness, but also what's happening after it. How is our child trying to cope with that anxiety? Now, moms and dads, even as adults, we often struggle with coping effectively with our own anxiety. Our little kiddos, depending on what age ours are, don't even have fully developed brains yet. So their brains do not fully develop in the prefrontal cortex region, which is the region that is responsible for wise decisions and managing emotional responses until 25. So what we know is that our children very often don't have great tools to cope with their anxiety. How are we noticing their coping when the anxiety is triggered? We may dig, we may chew, we may have that shortened breath that's indicative of the fight or flight response. We may notice our children are smoking, vaping, abusing drugs, alcohol as a means of trying to cope with anxiety or depression or a lot of other negative feelings. Perhaps they're spending lots and lots of time on the internet. This is not uncommon. Unfortunately, that tends to make the anxiety worse. So you may notice that their coping, if it's ineffective coping, makes the anxiety worse. So all of these are ways that we can just take step one of move toward our child's anxiety, which is really to become a good and a wise student. What triggers it? How does it show up in their body, in their thoughts, in their sleep patterns, in their internet usage, in their functioning? And how are they coping? What happens after the anxiety? Okay, so we're just getting curious. We are not affixing labels or value. It's not good or bad. It's not right or wrong.
I love how she reminds us there, it's important to recognize our child's anxiety. Recognizing that anxiety matters. Pointing it out, knowing that for them to know that you know that they're feeling that way. And she also shared that it always makes sense. Even if it doesn't make sense to us, there is always a reason for anxiety. And sometimes it takes a while to work through what that might be. but there's usually something that is causing that anxiety. And she mentioned social media can quietly induce anxiety without us parents knowing, and other things like that. So next, Jenna recommended that we observe our child. And while we're observing how your child is trying to cope with their anxiety, here are some key questions. So feel free to take a picture of this or write this down. But here are some things you can ask while you're trying to notice, okay, what is triggering my child's anxiety? You can kind of ask yourself that. Is it social events? Is it stress at school? Is it friends? Is it pressure? Is it good grades? Is it an overscheduled calendar? What is triggering my child's anxiety? That's one question to ask. Another question to ask is, when and how does it show up? Are there certain situations that anxiety is always happening on? You know, is it the Friday spelling test? Is it maybe every night your child is picking a fight with you and you're thinking, I wonder why my child picks a fight with me at night while we're preparing dinner? Why is that the time? So those are things to think about too. When and how does it show up? And how does it show up? You know, is it a fight? Is it, you know, showing up in another way? The other thing I'd like to have you really think about is, how is your child coping? You know, coping skills are usually very positive, but they can also be negative. And these negative behaviors may be a sign your child is trying to cope. So think about this for yourself. What are some things you do to cope, right? I can tell you one of the things I do to cope is in the middle of the day, if I am struggling to focus, I will get in my car and I will drive down to the nearest coffee shop and get an iced tea, right? And that's just something I can do to cope, right? It kind of gets my mind off of it. You might have things like that that you do as well. So take time to write down your thoughts in your notebook, so you can reflect on really maybe how, you know, how your child is coping. So take a few minutes, think about these questions. Feel free to take a picture of this screen if you'd like. All right. So our next segment, Jenna is really going to share step 2. So the first step is notice, and the second step is notify. We're really trying to figure out what your child's anxiety is trying to tell you. Let's watch a little bit more on this together.
Now we want to go to step 2, which is notify. What is their anxiety wanting to notify them or us about? So this is really important, parents, because what we know about anxiety is that we don't really have a ton of control over whether or not anxiety gets triggered or not. Anxiety is actually hardwired into our bodies, and it works very much like an alarm. So when there is a threat, the alarm goes off and anxiety floods. So it's just like a house alarm. If a burglar tries to get into the house, in other words, there's a threat to the integrity of the house, it'll trip the burglar alarm. The burglar alarm will go off, and ideally the police will come or the burglar will be scared and will run off. Okay, anxiety works like the burglar alarm in our body. Anxiety is like the trip of the alarm that tells us something is wrong. And that thing that is wrong is there is an external threat, real or perceived, somewhere. And this is so critical in the move towards skill, parents, because when we can understand that, number one, our children do not really have control over their anxiety getting triggered any more than we do. And that when their anxiety is triggered, it is triggered because it has an important message for us. And that message is that their body is perceiving danger on some level. This is really important to know. Now we can become curious about what the danger is. Is it a real danger? And when I say danger, I mean a threat to the integrity of our child's system. So in that context, danger could be anything from a physical threat, which would be like bullying at school or something of that nature, where there's literally perhaps a physical threat that is present in our child's world. Or it could be more likely for most of our kiddos, an emotional, spiritual, sexual threat. So it could be online bullying. It could be academic threat, the threat of not achieving. And then we want to be curious, why is that a threat? Is there pressure in the household to achieve at a certain unrealistic standard? Or is there pressure in the school system to achieve to a certain standard? Is there pressure to live out a certain idealized life of a certain type of college and a certain type of career that the child may or may not have bought into, have chosen for themselves, that's coming from an outside agenda? When that happens, that becomes an external threat and it evokes anxiety. Make sense? So becoming curious about these external threats. What is it that is triggering the anxiety? Many of those things our children don't have any control over, but we might be able to help with. For example, if we are putting pressure on our children to achieve at a certain level that is creating anxiety for them, we then may have the ability to reduce the threat to help them lower their anxiety. So we may want to change where we are in terms of our expectations of their grades, their extracurricular involvement, their leadership, their personal social development, their spiritual life. We tend to have a lot of idealized demands as parents that we can sometimes misplace on our children. So becoming curious and understanding what the anxiety wants to notify us about is really important.
So that's really a powerful takeaway. Our children do not have control over the anxiety getting triggered. When their anxiety is triggered, it's because it has an important message. And that message is their body is perceiving danger on some level. So that's something that always sort of sticks with me from that section. And the alarm trips, depending on how vulnerable a child is feeling, their history, there's lots that can go into that and go into your child's brain feeling threatened. And so underneath anxiety is really fear. And our job is to see our children's behavior as a signal that they are in a state of overwhelming fear. And that's why with anxiety, we need to be so compassionate. And compassion really really matters as we're dealing with anxiety. So think about your child's anxiety. Think about your own anxiety. Is the danger real or imagined? Is it physical? Is it bullying or abuse? Is it emotional? Is there a fear of not being included or worrying about an issue? Maybe even an issue that's going on in the world today. Maybe it's not something that's going on in your household or your classrooms, but maybe, something that's going on in the world. Is it an external threat? Is it the pressure to make straight A's? This could even look like a child who's getting good grades and is doing really well, but maybe that child is still holding a lot of anxiety about their grades. So that can happen too. And that, that's one of those sort of hidden ones. So knowing the types of danger, really think about your child, really think about yourself. What is it that might be triggering anxiety? What are the anxiety triggers we can watch out for? And it's okay if you don't know what they are right away. If you're going, I don't know. That's okay. Remember, you have to first do that first step of notice. And, that might take a little bit. So we're back in Menti. And again, we're here to help each other. So what are things I can do to reduce the threat, whether it's real or perceived? What are some things you can do to reduce the threat that your child is facing? And kind of the type of threat your child is facing will definitely impact your answer, whether it's physical, emotional, external. For example, if it's a physical danger, helping them to set boundaries can be really helpful in helping your child feel safe. If it's an external threat or pressure, you can let them know it's okay and you'll always love them no matter what happens. Encourage them to try their best. but make sure they know that no matter what happens, it'll be okay. If it's an emotional threat, we might need to let them know that you'll, like I said, always love them no matter what happens, forever and ever. Yeah, absolutely. One of the things that you can do to just reduce the threat is identify the issue, identify the fear there. And remember, if you're on Menti, feel free to go to next slide if you need to do that. Sometimes people get stuck on the last slide, so look for that go to next slide question so you can go ahead and answer this. Let's see if we can get a few more in here. Listen, look for changes. Absolutely. Those are also things that really you can do to reduce the threat or a perceived threat. And somebody in my last session just said, let my child know they're loved. And absolutely, that's definitely something you can do as well. And while those are coming in, we had another question come in. My kid hits himself when he is sad or upset or hears something he doesn't like. How can we help him, deal with that anxiety so he doesn't hurt himself? And, I think that is going back to those trends. When is that happening? What's happening around the time that that's happening? Is it that there's too much on the schedule? Is it there's not enough time, right? Kind of really go back to that notice piece. Talk to them about their fears openly. Yeah. And talk about your fears openly. I think both of those things are important. Yeah, that can be scary for mom and dad too. And here's some of the things we do to cope in a healthy way. Giving more time, building more time into schedule. We're rushing around. We're always having to hurry, right? And that can definitely induce anxiety. So, let's move on to the next segment where Jenna is going to share strategies to help move toward anxiety, not against anxiety.
Rather than moving against the anxiety, okay, which would be things like, why are you so anxious? Or would you quit wiggling your leg? You're driving me crazy, kid. Or, oh, man, I can't even think. Would you just go outside or just go away? Or you need to get your anxiety under control, buddy, because you are just too much. Those would be move against strategies, as would be, oh, I'm so worried. You're so anxious. I don't know what to do. I'm just really worried. That in another sense is a move against strategy, because there's this sense of powerlessness, but we want to force that anxiety to go away. So rather than those techniques, what would it be like if we move toward with these types of questions? Sweetheart, I'm noticing that your leg seems to be jiggling a lot. And you also seem to be picking at your fingers or biting the inside of your cheek. I'm wondering if you may be feeling anxious. Sometimes those are ways that anxiety lives in our bodies. So it's important that we, even in our language with our child, separate out the anxiety from who they are. Okay. So if a child says, yeah, I think I'm feeling anxious, or, oh, I'm so stressed out, I've got this test and the team captain selection is next week and I don't know if I'm going to make it, and the dance is tomorrow and nobody's asked me, then we can ask them, what do you think the anxiety wants you to know? Okay, we're inviting them into this move toward process with us. We're equipping them with these really revolutionary tools. What do you think your anxiety may be telling you? What is it trying to notify you? Now, our children may or may not be able to put words to it, but we can help them. Do you think your anxiety is letting you know that we have too many commitments on the schedule? Or do you think your anxiety is needing you to know that you need a little less screen time because it seems to get worse with too much screen time? Or do you think your anxiety is wanting to let you know that we need to lower your caffeine intake? Sometimes it's pretty basic stuff like too much caffeine. So just helping the child to become curious about the anxiety, recognizing that it is not who they are, it's a part of them that has an important message for them. Sweetheart, what do you think your anxiety is trying to tell you? What does it want us to know? Powerful question. And you'd be amazed, even young children can really, when asked, answer these questions in some pretty amazing ways.
I'm curious if any of those anxiety signs that she mentioned sound familiar in your own home. I can definitely relate to some of them. You know, help your child to become curious about their anxiety and recognize that it is not who they are, it's part of them, and that it has an important message. That is something that always sort of sticks with me in this section. So first, our first step was notice. And then we went to step 2, which was notify. So first we notice something's up. Then we focused on notify, and now we're going to focus on need. How to answer the anxiety alarm. What do we do? So this part is always super helpful for me personally.
Step 3 is need. What does the anxiety need in order to feel better? Now, this is a really important question because anxiety often shows up because it is energy, fight or flight energy, that does not have anywhere to go. It is not being discharged. So when we are faced with an external threat, our body automatically goes into fight or flight or freeze if we're in a shutdown state. So one thing our anxiety might need for us to know is we need some physical outlet to discharge this fight or flight energy. We may need to, instead of sitting in front of a screen at night and watching TV and checking out, we may need to go for a family walk. We may need to go shoot hoops in the driveway. We may need to run or do some yoga. We may need some physical way of moving the body so that the body physiologically is able to discharge that energy. And that's just the result of number 3. What do you think your anxiety needs? Well, some other things that our anxiety might need might be some safety. Anxiety could be letting us know that there's a threat that we need to place some safety around. So if there's bullying going on, and we find out as parents, the anxiety may be that we need to work with our child, not go over their head, but work with them to identify the wise way to address the bullying, either directly with the bullies or with school or whoever is the appropriate place to take that bullying situation. We may need to create safety. Anxiety may be needing to let us know, or what it needs from us is, again, there are expectations that are unmanageable. So if we expect all A's and varsity sports and student ministry opportunities and campus leadership and a perfect social life and, even if that's not coming from us as parents, then maybe what the anxiety needs to feel better is for us to come alongside our child and say, oh, all of those crazy expectations in our culture are overwhelming. Of course you would feel anxious, and you can't fight them and you can't run away from them. So that creates this free-floating anxiety. So what the anxiety may need is for us as parents to be with our child in it, name it, and then place some distance between our child and us as a team and all those external high unrealistic expectations. So we may need to sit with our child literally and say, wow, all those expectations are overwhelming. What does your child's anxiety need in order to feel more comfortable, in order to be able to calm down? Does it need safety? Does it need protection? Does it need a voice? Does it need physical outlet?
Our anxiety needs physical outlet. so that the body physiologically is able to discharge that fight or flight energy that we're always talking about. And so I want you to think about this. What are some of the physical activities your child might enjoy? This slide really goes hand in hand with the previous, where you can really think about what physical activities your child may enjoy. So let's go over the 3 areas of anxiety one more time, and how we can help our children move toward, and how we can help move toward our child's anxiety. The first is notice. Notice what the anxiety is trying to tell you. Get curious. You kind of have to become a detective, and then notify. You know, your body or your child's body is trying to tell you something is wrong by showing these, anxious symptoms. And some type of external threat, whether it's real or just perceived, some sort of danger, is causing this anxiety. And then the third piece, need. What does your child need to calm down? Do they need a physical outlet? Do they need an emotional outlet? Do they need to talk to somebody? Do they need to talk to you? Do they need to talk to a friend? Do they need to go for a walk? Shoot some hoops? What physical outlet might be helpful? Somebody also shared on our last session that showers can be really helpful. Water can be helpful in calming down a child. So I thought that was a really interesting one as well. And there's a lot of research around that. So again, when we talk about answering the alarm, there are 3 really powerful questions that we can ask when we're in that last phase. And those are, what do you think your anxiety is trying to tell you? Does it need safety protection? Does it need a voice? It could be unrealistic expectations that your child has placed on themselves or you've placed on them. As a parent, work with your child to acknowledge those concerns and then address them. And then again, focus on what does your anxiety want us to know and what does your anxiety need to be able to calm down. So families, I'm interested in hearing from you. Here's your moment to make a plan to meet the needs of your child's anxiety. What are some of the things that you could do? What are some of the things that could be part of your plan? When you notice your child has anxiety, what can be your plan to meet the needs of your child? Talk to them, make a plan together on what they might need, what works for them. That's so important because your plan might be different than their plan. And so figuring out, is it a family walk? Is it shooting hoops? Is it taking the dog around the block? Is it just being able to talk? In one of our other sessions, one of our other therapists says, say 100 words your child says, say only 2 or 3. Do they need somebody to listen? What are some of those things? Keep those coming in. I saw we had another question come into the questions, so I'm going to go ahead and take that while we wait. Talk about it. Yeah, absolutely. Talk about it. That's the best part of your plan, is to just start talking about it. Now, I am so excited. If you have more questions or need more help, we have something called parentguidance.org. And I'm going to actually go live into this site. This is the parentguidance.org site. Well, this is Google, but parent guidance will come up in just a second. This is the parentguidance.org site, and this is free to anyone, anywhere. And I'm excited to share with you a little bit about it. Any parent, any adult, any mentor of a child can come here to get started and create a free account. And once you have created your free account, you can go ahead and log into parentguidance.org. And this site is completely HIPAA protected. And one of the things I want to share with you on this site is there are over 50 on-demand courses that you can take in the comfort of your own home, in your own phone, on your own time. And there's everything from being bullied to how can we help prevent suicide, to self-harm. I think we had a question about that. How children form their identity or personality in different ages. Pornography. There's more on anxiety and another section of Move Toward by Jenna. Anger and frustration, another section on anxiety, and moving towards your child's anxiety versus your own anxiety. Inner critic, grief and sorrow, insecurity, all of these classes, we have over 60, and they're all between 15 and 45 minutes. And I would recommend that you check these out. Body love, any of these that might be interesting to you. Everyday happiness. If you have a certain thing that your child is dealing with, maybe you have a preteen at home, you can pick a section here that might work. Maybe sorrow. Maybe your child's been dealing with sorrow. So feel free to view our library by topic as well. I'm just going to show you what one of these courses look like. This is our digital media course. I'm in the middle of taking it right now. How digital media is changing our children's mental health. And as you can see, all you have to do is click in here, play the course. It'll save your spot. So if you don't make it through the whole section, not to worry. So that is courses on parentguidance.org, free to anyone, anywhere. If you have a sister-in-law that lives in Nebraska, you could share this with her. So just wanted to share that with you. And then we also have Ask a Therapist, and this is where folks can actually submit questions to our clinical team, like Dr. Kevin Skinner, Dr. Lopez Larson, who's a Harvard-trained psychologist, or Jenna Ramirsma, who we just heard from. And our clinical team will actually respond to these questions. So here's a question. How does a parent's anxiety, a parent's anxiousness and depression affect a child? And we'll just listen to this response here to give you a taste of some of these. When families submit questions, of course, they're submitted anonymously, and then those questions get answered by our clinical team.
Martin Seligman, in his book, Authentic Happiness, suggested that up to 50% of our emotions is actually genetically we're inherited. That's an interesting starting point. How much does a parent's anxiousness and depression affect the child? Well, our genes might be passing down some of these anxiousness, depression, and according to Martin Seligman, maybe 50% that we get to play with. The rest of it we inherit. I really like Dan Siegel's work, and he said something interesting. He said, as we as parents work through our stuff, we also pass down what we learn to our children through our emotions, through our own regulation of difficult things. As parents, we can learn to model how to deal with difficult emotions. Even if we've been modeling what may be anxious or depressed, we can actually model how to work through depression, how to deal with our own anxieties. As I've talked with parents who ask similar questions, like, I think my child's picking up on my emotions, I said, great, let's learn how to do that together. Let's sit down and let's do a mindfulness exercise and listen to a guided meditation. I personally have children who have anxiety, and it's not uncommon for me to be with my child who's feeling anxious. I literally will put my head up against her head and I will rock with her, and we will hum together, and I will do a breathing exercise with her.
So I'll let you dive in if you want to hear the rest of that, but just those are in there. You can get in and you can go to parentguidance.org, create an account, and dive into the Ask a Therapist questions that have been posted by other parents, or take another course. The other thing that I am so excited is that you all have parent coaching. So if you feel like you want to talk one-on-one with a mental health professional, Alachua has partnered with us to bring you and your family HIPAA protected mental health coaching. And it is so easy. All you have to do is go to parentguidance.org, click register for coaching, fill out a 1-minute survey, and within 24 to 48 hours, one of our coaches will get back to you. You can do a one-on-one video chat with them once. You can do it 3, 4, 5 times. You can do it every week for the rest of the school year if you want, and some are 2. So this is for parents. We know that being a parent is hard, and so parent coaching is something that is available to you, and you can also message your coach, which is really cool, 24/7. Coaches will, if you're dealing with something in particular, they might send you a link. Maybe you're dealing with grief and they might invite you to join other parents that are dealing with grief to talk about it. So really, it's a cool thing, and it's totally up to you. They'll meet you where you're at. If you are interested in parent coaching or mental health coaching, feel free to go ahead and sign up for coaching. If you're on Menti, you can sign up right on your screen. And so we'll hear from
I'm a parent.
a little bit more about coaching.
You're a parent. I think we can agree that this space is very difficult. We have these amazing little children that do not come with a manual. We honestly don't know what to do with them, and it's a terrifying space. It's a fun space, but it's also quite difficult. So what our coaches help you do is to walk through those difficulties, having support and the confidence that you need as a parent. I think back on when I was a young mother, I would have loved to have somebody there by my side, asking me how I'm doing, helping me navigate through some of the difficulties that I felt. I felt very inadequate. I would have loved to have someone say, actually, you're doing really well. And not just that, but the things I was struggling with, giving me that information that I needed to really be resilient and to parent a little bit better.
So that's just a little bit about our parent coaching. Please feel free to sign up for parent coaching on your screen now. If you are on Menti, you have the direct link. Otherwise, you can go to parentguidance.org and click coaching. It is completely free for any adult, any parent, any mentor to a child in Alachua. And now that we have spent the evening together, I would love for us to just do an ending survey. How are you feeling now? Are you feeling a little bit more equipped to support, your child in managing their anxiety, or maybe you're feeling about the same? Do you know where to find resources to help navigate and manage your child's anxiety? How do you feel about your community and their interest in your child's anxiety? Excellent. Thank you so much for sharing and being with us this evening. Looks like we have some higher numbers. Oops, sorry. As we end our session this evening. So thank you all so much. And then what are some things that you'll remember from tonight's conversation? What are some things that will stick with you? Love to hear from you in Menti. What are a few things you'll remember from today's conversation? Maybe to move toward, maybe that there's always a reason for anxiety. The anxiety isn't you, it's just the alarm trying to tell you something. Absolutely. And as you think of things for your plan that we talked about earlier, here are some other ideas, for how to meet the needs of your child's anxiety or your own anxiety. Talk about it. Number one, talk about that anxiety. We had a parent share that as well. Deep breathing. Give them a voice. Let them talk about it. Do something physical. Go on a family walk, a run, play some basketball, physical movement, and more sleep. You may want to reduce schedule. Work with your child. As a parent, you don't have the answer. So you have to go through those steps, kind of notice, notify, right? Figure out the need. Absolutely. Thank you all so much for being with us this evening. I'm really excited that we're going to continue to have more sessions throughout the school year. Our next session is on bullying, and that is November 10th from 6 to 7. If you would like to join us and you want to sign up right now, you can go ahead and scan that code to go ahead and join the next session on bullying. Thank you all so much for being here this evening. I really appreciate you. And it looks like we've got one more question. And somebody said they go towards anxiety. Yes, absolutely. I think that's something they remembered from the session. So thanks again. I appreciate you all being here. We hope that you join us November 10th. Again, feel free to scan that QR code, or if you're on Menti, you can sign up right now and it will just send you a little message, a reminder of when that is. So if you're busy, you can get that reminder. Thank you so much. I am so glad that you are able to join us tonight. And I hope you found some valuable tools as it relates to your own anxiety and your child's anxiety this evening. And just thank you for being here today and discussing anxiety with us. Have a wonderful evening.